A nonstop pattern of winter storms, including snow, ice, and big impacts to travel on the way for much of the eastern United States. Welcome, everybody. My name's Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and welcome to the channel. If you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications, and comment. Let me know where you're watching from and what you're seeing out in your neck of the woods. That's going to be very important over the next couple of days, and really probably over the next week or two, as this very active pattern really ramps up. And I'll tell you, folks, I think someone here in the eastern U.S. could get more than 2 feet of snow before all is said and done here through the middle of February, as this just train of winter storms continues. And we've seen some interesting changes in the models, and we'll talk about that. And some folks that maybe looked a little bit more like rain yesterday could be a little icier now with some of those forecast projections. With that said, let's go ahead and dive right on into the data. Now, what you're seeing next to me, this is the latest run of our European computer model. I think doing a tremendous job of showing this potential. And again, it's not hard to find that train of storms. Here's one that swings on through this weekend. You can see that one bringing in active weather, and then another one right after it by about Monday, Tuesday of next week. Here it comes, hitting some of the same places with snow and ice, and then another big storm right after that one, just in time for Valentine's Day. So a very, very big time pattern on the way, and like I said, you're going to feel it. We're going to see impacts. And that's what we're really going to try to break down in today's video, is who's going to see the worst of it and exactly what is the worst of it. Now, what you're seeing here, this is satellite imagery. This is our long wave infrared loop. And you're probably thinking, all right, I don't see a lot going on. And you'd be correct. Right now is kind of the calm before the storm for some folks, but not quite everybody. That next big storm system and snowmaker, if you will, already kind of on the map here. Might be hard to pick out, but here it is over the Rockies right now. You see this kind of enhanced area of some shower and storm activity. Yeah, that's our storm slowly getting its act together, and throughout the day today and into tonight, we'll slowly cross into the plains, beginning to bring snow to the northern tier, and then by tomorrow, bringing snow and ice into the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, and into the Northeast. And then we'll then turn our eyes to next week. So it's, again, going to be nonstop here, and you're going to want to really have to stay up to date and keep on coming back, as the models are going to change a little bit, and we're going to see more storms to track here through February. Now, this right here, this is our radar imagery. And again, right now, not a lot happening. A couple places to zoom in on, though. Let's go ahead and start in the Northeast. So I've been talking about this kind of secondary front for Friday. Well, today's Friday. We finally made it. And yeah, sure enough, you can see the front just on our radar imagery. See some of these snow squalls picking up here from the Alleghenies back towards State College, Scranton, and then all the way up into Maine. We've got a bit of an Arctic front slowly pushing through here. And the kind of important piece to this is the cold air that it's going to bring with it. Obviously, for snow, we need cold air. This is going to reinforce the Northeast with that very cold Arctic air before the storm system arrives tomorrow, and that's going to help a lot of us stay as kind of an all-snow event here through much of the kind of northeastern part of the U.S. and then even up into the Great Lakes as well. And then we look back west. Yeah, here's the storm getting its act together, already seeing snow in Montana, Idaho, Washington, and even beginning to see the signs of that snow breaking containment of the Rockies and getting into the Dakotas, Minnesota, and eventually into Michigan, Wisconsin, and then further east by the time we get on into Saturday evening. Now, here we go. These are our current alerts out there, and you can see the map slowly filling in here. That swath of winter weather advisories from Montana all the way into the Twin Cities, up into northern Wisconsin. In fact, winter storm watches in this area of blue through north central Wisconsin, and newly issued winter storm watches for portions of New England, including New York City, Boston, back down towards Hartford, Connecticut, into Providence, Rhode Island. In fact, the entire state of Rhode Island and Connecticut under winter storm watches, and then even up the Hudson River Valley into New York. So it's on the way, folks. We're not far. You can see the map beginning to fill in here. And I think by tomorrow morning and even this evening, by the way, I'll probably have an evening video to give you another update. The map will be even further filled in. So starting to get to go time. We're getting out of that long range and medium range and really hitting the short range on this storm system. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and kind of talk about the setup a little bit. It's not a very complicated one. It's pretty straightforward. Here's the energy on our vorticity map. Again, you can kind of see all of this lift and all of this spin we have over the northwestern United States through the Rockies. And the key is that that is going to move east and run into that cold air. You can kind of see our cold air boundary through our jet stream here, right in here. This is kind of that Arctic front. So everything to the north up here is very cold air. And our storm system here is going to take a track kind of like this, and obviously interacting with that cold air to the north. That's normally how it works. That's exactly how it's going to happen this go around as well. So taking a look here, we'll go ahead and move it ahead into time. This is this evening into the overnight. Let's pause right here. This is early tomorrow morning. All of that energy right over Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then pushing off to the east towards the northeast by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon and evening. And then we'll go through the overnight Saturday. You see that energy working on through. And then by Sunday morning and afternoon, folks, we're really just about done. So again, not a super long lasting storm, but I think the snowfall rates are going to be plenty efficient enough for folks to get half a foot to a foot of snow out of this one before all is said and done. And with that said, let's go ahead and start breaking down some model guidance for you. Now, this is the latest GFS model. I'm going to start kind of zoomed out, and I'm going to zoom in on the Northeast specifically, where I think obviously we have a lot of viewers and a pretty highly populated area, that's going to get pretty big time impacts out of this storm system. So this is this evening, this is 7 p.m. tonight, what future radar could look like. You see that snow beginning back through the Dakotas into Minnesota, and eventually through the overnight tonight will spread eastward. Another thing to note, we could see some showers in the deep south tonight. Not even really the deep south, just the southeast in general, from Arkansas over to the Carolinas. Really any point in between could see some showers. We've got that spring fever continuing through the weekend down south. And an important thing about that is that obviously is important for our folks down south, but that's helping to strengthen these storms as they cross this favorable baroclinic zone, as we call it, basically where that cold air and that warm air kind of clash. That's where storms like to be and where they like to strengthen. So this kind of clashing air mass, these seasons slowly beginning to change towards springtime, that's helping to fuel these storms, and again could fuel some showers down south. But back to the snowy side of it, here we go. Overnight tonight, this is getting into the midnight hour. A nice little band of snow up through Minnesota, the Dakotas, getting into Wisconsin. Later on tonight, getting even further into Wisconsin and Michigan. And here we go. Let me back it up one more frame. This is tomorrow morning. You can see that center low pressure really beginning to form at the surface here. We've got kind of a couple pieces of energy. We've got northern stream upper level energy producing this snow to the north. And then our surface energy is beginning to kind of produce this area of rain off here to the east through the Ohio River. Our warm front associated with our low pressure kind of parked in here, and that's creating that advection and that lift due to the advection here through the Ohio Valley. And again, rain for folks in Kentucky, West Virginia, Missouri, but you start going north towards Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, especially the northern half of those states. That's where we could see a burst of snow or some ice, but the real show going to be up into Minnesota, Minnesota too, but Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. This is tomorrow afternoon. Also noticing kind of that warm front getting enough lift into the mid-Atlantic. We could see some precipitation beginning with some snow or a wintry mix as far south as Baltimore and potentially DC. I think mainly rain for the Delmarva out of this one, but the DMV, specifically the northern half of it, could get some wintry weather out of this. And then this storm begins to work into the northeast by tomorrow evening. And with that time frame, I will go ahead and quickly move through it, and then we'll zoom in. So again, I'm going to go through this map a little bit quicker, but the storm starts impacting the northeast tomorrow night. Another thing to notice here is we do have some showers back down south. Just while we're on the bigger picture, I'll show this to you. But obviously, I think the big story out of the storm, not hard to imagine, is this big shield of snow into the northeast overnight Saturday and even into Sunday morning. And then again, pulling on out of here by Sunday afternoon. And that sets up shop for another storm right after it. You can already see that one beginning. We'll talk about that next. All right, let's zoom on into the northeast here and break it down for you. So this is, let me back it up even more. This afternoon, we are going to see some snow showers. In fact, you saw that this morning. These are those snow squalls I was telling you about. We're already kind of seeing on radar. It will slowly kind of die out throughout the day. The more important thing is the cold air that's being established, and less so the snow that comes with it. That'll be, just kind of icing on top of the cake, if you will. But I do think the Tug Hill, specifically south of Watertown there, could get some nice lake effect throughout the day. Definitely watching for that. But the real show again tomorrow. So here we go. Tomorrow morning, you're waking up. This is about 7, 8 a.m. Not a lot going on, but you can see that precipitation building back down south through West Virginia, Virginia. In fact, some ice in the mountains of West Virginia and Virginia specifically, those eastern facing slopes where we have some cold air damming kind of helping out here. So watch for that on your Saturday morning commute, but it stays relatively quiet for much of the Northeast through the morning. Now we get into the afternoon, 1, 2 p.m. This is when things really begin to go downhill in D.C., Baltimore, kind of just that sleet, freezing rain, showery mess. Into the region. If you thought we had icy problems a couple days ago, well, this is going to be a lot like it, I think, through that region. And that really continues, and we could see some pretty big ice accumulations. This is by tomorrow afternoon and evening, 4 p.m. You can kind of see that wintry mess beginning even back towards Ohio, Indiana, and then that cold air damming signature kind of showing up here as well. Now, Philadelphia, I think you're going to start with a little bit of snow here right about 3 to 6 p.m. tomorrow, and then transitioning throughout the day or throughout the evening, really, to ice. New York City also going to start as snow. You can see the storm really beginning to get its act together. And the thing to note here is that northern stream upper level energy and that more dominant surface energy going to kind of maybe separate a little bit here in the beginning. So here's our surface low. Here's that upper level kind of tongue of moisture coming through, and kind of areas in between. You might be a little annoyed at one point tomorrow evening. You're seeing snow to the south, snow to the north. Don't worry, I think the radar will fill in for you, and you can kind of see how that's going to unfold here through the overnight. And here we go. This is about 10 p.m. Notice radar really blossoming. We've got all snow really through the entire state of New York. Now, New York City, I'll tell you, this is one of the toughest forecasts for this storm. Philadelphia, I'm feeling pretty confident this is going to start as snow, then change over to some sort of sleet, freezing rain, snow mix, or maybe all freezing rain, all sleet. Either way, will not stay a perfect snowstorm for you, at least with this one now. Again, next week, that one could be a little bit better. But New York City points north. That's where we're more likely to stay all snow, especially Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I think that's going to be the bullseye for accumulations. Look at about midnight tomorrow night, getting into early Sunday morning. Heavy snowfall rates from the Hudson River Valley over towards Providence and all places in between, Bridgeport, into really much of Connecticut here, down through the coast, and then getting into Massachusetts, down near the Cape, and even into Boston, getting pretty good snowfall rates out of this. New York City, again, that snow to sleet transition, and then throughout the evening, it just keeps on puking snow, as I like to say, here into Massachusetts. You can even see some of these stronger, heavier bands of snow down near the Cape. Now, this won't be a very dry snow. It also probably won't be an overly wet snow, but it's probably going to be one of those average snows, if you will. So pretty close to that 10-to-1 ratio, maybe a little less than 10-to-1. Could even be a little bit more depending on how far north you are. Up here into Maine, into Vermont, New Hampshire, this might be a little bit more of a fluffy snow. The further south you get towards the sleet line, going to be a little bit more of that wet snow. So going to depend on where you're at. And that will affect those ratios, which is very important for forecasting the snow. Now, it keeps on here. This is Sunday morning. By the time you're waking up, pulling away at this point, but still some snow into New England, specifically eastern New England, Boston, the Cape, up into the down east areas of Maine, still seeing some pretty good snowfall, and then clearing out throughout the day and a couple snow showers potentially Sunday afternoon, but really a much nicer day in general. So that's the storm. Now, let's talk about snowfall totals. Starting out here into the Dakotas and Minnesota. And this is a forecast straight from the National Weather Service, and I agree pretty well, as they are the experts after all, so they might as well know what they're talking about. And got a good little band here of snow. Check this out, about 3 to 6 inches right along the Dakota line and then into Minnesota. I think just north of the Twin Cities is going to be the hot spot there. We could see even upwards of near half a foot in that region. Minneapolis, St. Paul itself, probably in that 2 to 4 inch range out of this storm, and then could see 1 to 3 inches even down south towards the Iowa state line. Now, moving it on over here and getting on into the Midwest, let's take a look at ice a little bit. Not an overly concerning look here, but in fact, let's kind of change it here and look at the model kind of trends here, or the comparing models feature. This lets us look at different models. I think this will be helpful. So this is what the NAM is saying. Again, not a huge area of ice, but a little swath here from Ohio back even into potentially northern Missouri there, back towards Kansas City. Could get a glaze of ice out of this. What about the European? European showing more towards Ohio. I think that's closer to reality. This is the Canadian showing a pretty, slim but pretty fierce band of ice. We'll watch for that. We'll show you this model. This is the like mesoscale Canadian model, and the GFS here. And if we round it all out, here's the blended model. So I think the biggest kind of takeaway from all of that is the highest confidence for ice in this region is going to be through Ohio and portions of Indiana. Not expecting a huge ice storm, but some folks could get a 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. That's more than enough to cause big time roadway disruptions. It's going to mess up travel. That's going to mess up where you're going. And, obviously, just not something you want to drive in at all. Now, what about snow in this region? Well, the snow is going to be displaced to the north here, up through Wisconsin and Michigan, and a nice little snow event with it. Again, I think northern Wisconsin, we could see 4 to 8 inches of snow here in some places. Back into northern Michigan, maybe a little bit less, maybe more 3 to 5 compared to 4 to 8, but you get the point. A nice swath of snow here that is definitely going to make the ground white. It's going to feel a lot more wintry out there with this sort of setup. So definitely going to be watching that. And then we'll go ahead and move the map even further to the east here. And let's start talking about the northeast and snow and ice totals. Now we'll do the same thing here. Let's move this to our compare models loop so we can get an idea of what different models are showing us. And this is the NAM. This is the model I showed you earlier. A pretty good ice event on the NAM, and you kind of saw that earlier. I mean, we're talking, again, a 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch in D.C., Baltimore, up towards Philadelphia, higher end ice into the mountains of West Virginia. Again, those eastern-facing slopes where that cold air damming is kind of trapped that cold air against the mountainside. That could lead to some pretty big ice totals, and then some ice back towards Pittsburgh even. But you notice the northern extent of this, as far north as it gets, is about State College, Harrisburg, about halfway up through Jersey, and then into Long Island, getting a little bit of ice, but nothing into the interior and kind of north of there through Boston, Connecticut, Rhode Island. I think you'll really be spared from the ice from this one. And it should be a beautiful all snow event. Then the concern for snow lovers would be, are there any dry slots that try to work in and kind of mess up your QPF totals? That's a NAM though. European, I mean, pretty similar, a little bit further north with the ice. So, noting that, but that's a big ice storm, folks, back through Pennsylvania. I mean, that's nearly 1/2 inch of ice. That's not just roadway disruptions, that's power outages. And obviously Super Bowl Sunday the next day, and a lot of Eagles fans in here, so we don't want to see that. But we'll hope that we don't run into too many issues with power outages, but I'll warn you now, if we get something like the European shows, that's more than enough to cause big power outage concerns here right along the Mason-Dixon line, and then a little bit further north into Pennsylvania. The GFS model, yeah, pretty similar. So that's something we need to watch. The ice threat cannot be overlooked with this storm. Obviously, this is the map you want to see. This is the snow, but do not let your guard down on that ice potential. Going to be something we need to absolutely watch and pay close attention to. All right, so now what about snow? Obviously, that's what you want to see. This is the latest European model, and I think this is really about right, folks. A bullseye here right into Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and then even up into Vermont, New Hampshire. In fact, I'll kind of redraw it right into here. This is where the model has the most snow, but I really personally have my eyes on, let me see if I can pick a color that might show up pretty good. We'll do green. My eyes are right on this area, right in here. I think someone in here is going to get maybe 10 to 12 inches of snow. And then everywhere else in this bubble, probably a little bit more like, we'll say 6. Well, let me pick a different color so it kind of matches up here. Kind of more 6 to 10 in this region. So this is my forecast. I think the European doing an all right job of showing kind of my thoughts here. Get back down towards New York City. Personally, I'd say about 3 to 5 in New York City. I think you start as snow, you stay snow, but then by the end of it, some sleet might crunch the snow down just a little bit. So there might be a point where you have 6 inches of snow and everything, but then you end it with about 4, and you're thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. It kept falling from the sky. Why is there less now than there was? Well, that sleet, it's heavier than the snow, kind of compacts it down a little bit. So by the end of the storm, I'll say 3 to 5 in New York City. Philadelphia, it's going to be one of those dusting to an inch, maybe 1 to 3 inches at one point, and then the ice takes over, and then you're back down to a dusting to an inch type events. I know folks in Philadelphia might be a little annoyed by that one, but Philly, Baltimore, D.C., a little icier with this one, but wait till Monday and Tuesday. I think that's your storm. This storm is more Boston, kind of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and then up through Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York. This is their storm. All right, I'll show you a couple of more models too. This is the European, like I said. This is the GFS, very similar, even higher in totals on the GFS. The NAM, the model I showed you earlier, looks a little less on the totals, so we'll watch that. Still has higher in totals through the mountains here. I think that is something to note here, take away. And then shows, again, that very fine cutoff right around New York City, where it's only got about 2 inches or so in New York City. But then you get down further south and it's almost nothing. You go further north, it's almost half a foot. So very sharp gradient in there is definitely something to note and keep an eye on. All right, that gets us to the next storm. I know you're thinking, what in the world? We keep going. Yeah, me too. I'm also kind of surprised here. But this is the latest model. This is the latest European right at Sunday afternoon. So like I said, this is when our storm is winding down in the northeast. Here's the energy from it. At this point, though, we're on the converging side of it. Let me draw that a little bit better. We're on the converging side of the energy, meaning we've now got sinking motion behind the storm. So that's why we're seeing less activity by Sunday afternoon. But then watch what happens, folks. We go further ahead at a time. Here's Monday morning, another stout trough, another stout piece of energy working into kind of the southwestern United States, a pretty potent trough. And this one, once again, going to fire off a storm system. Here we go. It moves east, and look at all of this lift and kind of vorticity associated with it. It's going to be a very active start to next week in the east, and that means everyone in the east. Now, not everyone's going to see snow. A lot of people are, but some people are going to just get a good old-fashioned rain, maybe some severe weather to watch out for. And then after that, folks, the train just keeps rolling on the tracks here. That's Tuesday, Wednesday. And then look at this, by Valentine's Day, about Thursday, Friday, another big storm, another big piece of energy working through. So it's a very active pattern. Cannot really overstate that enough. And obviously, the more active it is, the more chances for winter weather there are. So we're going to go a little less in depth with this storm than the last one. Obviously, it's further out in time. It's going to change a little bit more, but I will show you the latest models. Here's the GFS. This is for Monday evening. Snow already breaking out through Kansas, Missouri, maybe some ice, snow down into the Ozarks on this run, and then all rain for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. All rain looks like for Nashville, but look to the north. This is a nice band of snow through Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky. You'll notice the track of this storm further south in the weekend storm. Something to note here. And for our friends down in North Carolina, I'll exclude South Carolina from this one, but if you're watching in Greensboro, the mountains of North Carolina, even places like Hickory, Statesville, up into this region, the trends have been a little bit further south on this early next week storm over the past couple of days. We'll see if that continues, but some of our models are hinting at maybe a bit of an ice threat down here. Looks like rain on this run. That could be ice, so stay tuned. I think all snow, though, for much of northern Virginia. Southern Virginia could run into some icing concerns. We'll see how the models play out. But D.C., Baltimore, back towards Lexington, Kentucky, Charleston, West Virginia, and then check this out. We keep on going. Philadelphia gets in on the snow, and just what a storm. This would be Tuesday afternoon. We've got heavy rain in the deep south, transitioning to heavy snow in the mid-Atlantic, and then rides up the I-95 corridor, and a nice picture-perfect winter storm for coastal areas of the Northeast, including the Jersey Shore, the Delmarva, up through Philadelphia, the DMV, even into Long Island, Cape Cod. And then that storm pulls on out of here, and check it out, by Thursday and Wednesday, another one works on through. This one a little bit further north, it gets a little bit further inland, and then we go even well out into time, and another big storm potential. This one looks like a little bit more of a cutter, but would still be a big storm right around the 15th or the middle of the month. So that's the latest GFS for the extended range. European, yeah, pretty similar. We'll start early next week. Here we go. Look at the storm beginning to break out further north, but you see the snow through similar areas. Big snow in Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York City, even up into Connecticut, Rhode Island. This storm, you want to be further south than north compared to the weekend storm. So it's a nice thing. Mother Nature's playing nice, kind of sharing the snow with everybody here with this active pattern. And then it keeps going next week, folks, on the European. And check this out. Next Thursday, we've got a whopper of a storm. This is a strong one. Now an inland cutter on this run. But this is next Thursday. This would have a severe weather component down into the Carolinas. This would have a heavy snow component to the north, and then kind of a rain just mess in between. But that would be a big storm to watch if the European is right now. The GFS wasn't quite as amped and had snow for more folks than this one. We'll watch the trends on that, though, again, about a week away. And then another big storm right around the middle of the month showing up on the models. This one even stronger. I mean, that's 976 millibars, 972 millibars. Obviously out there, and it's going to change, but that would bring blizzard potential for somebody should that verify. All right, now the Canadian model, I'll breeze on through this one just to say we showed it. Here we go. The first storm, pretty similar. The second storm through the middle of the week, pretty similar. Again, just a snowy mess for a lot of folks. and keeps on going. And again, we have that middle of the month storm as well. So all the models agree it's a big pattern. It's an active one. And with that said, let's talk about snow potential. Now, I'm not going to give you an exact total for any of these storms. Again, let's get through the weekend storm. Then we'll start talking next week by Sunday or so. And give you a better update then. But let's start with the ice threat. What's the ice threat next week? Well, notice this ice signal in a lot of the same places, West Virginia, Virginia, and notice how this tries to get down into North Carolina. I will mention our Euro AI model, which has been very good this winter, shows this storm a little bit further south and gets ice down here into Statesville, the Triad, and then back towards Hickory, areas north of Charlotte. It shows a little bit of ice. So watching that trend very carefully, a lot of times cold air damming, which would produce the cold air for the ice event, kind of does a little bit better or is colder than the models project, and that could obviously have big ramifications on down the road. So we'll watch that, but also watching Virginia and West Virginia for an icing threat early next week. And then some of the models here even bring that ice threat well into the interior by the second storm. This will be the Thursday, Friday time frame, the Valentine's storm, as I'm going to call it, and then just another big ice signal later in the month. So folks, it's not slowing down at all. It's going to keep on coming. What about snow? This is the European. Here's the first storm signal for the middle or for the early part of next week. The highest snow chances on the European, Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, kind of the gradient there through Virginia, getting up into the coastal Northeast into southern New England, including the Cape, Nantucket, Rhode Island. A good snow signal here. Again, not going to get too specific on details, but a nice looking signal. And then the second storm next week by, again, the Valentine's storm, by the next weekend, this one a little bit further inland on the Euro ensembles. And then another storm signal for the Northeast by about the 15th to 18th time frame. So it's crazy stuff, folks. And you know what, just to say, I did, and don't take this as a forecast, but I will show you the ensemble mean on the European through the end of the run. So this is the next 15 days. Again, I know what you're looking at, it's kind of crazy, but this is what the European says with all of its ensemble. So this is an average. This isn't one cherry-picked run. This is how much snow it thinks the U.S. will see between now and the 21st of February into the 22nd, that time frame. Folks, portions of the Northeast run in more than a 2-foot average of snowfall. You get down towards New York City, talking 16, 17 inches. Boston, again, right around 2 feet. Even back into the Ohio Valley, 1/2 foot to a foot. Down into Virginia, into the DC, Baltimore area, about a foot showing up here. Kansas City, 6 to 8 inches. This is a lot. This is a big signal for snow. And it's not going to play out exactly like this, so I don't want you to think this is exactly what the snowfall map will look like, but it shows who should be on the highest alert, and the person that should be, or the people that should be on the highest alert, is in the Northeast, followed by the Ohio Valley and into the Great Lakes, and then watching also down into maybe the kind of foothills of Virginia and the Carolinas for maybe some ice potential with this pattern should it shift south a little bit more, and that's what we will absolutely be watching. Alrighty, folks, well, that's all I got for you. Again, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. I also want to say thank you to everyone who wished me a happy birthday yesterday. That was super nice of you all. The comments were flooded with it, so I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. And yeah, that's all I got for you on this Friday. Also, I have a calculus test in about 2 hours, so if you're a believer in prayers and one up for me, not a fun class by any means, but do what you got to do. So with that said, you have a great one. Stay warm, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.